We've got our defending race winner from last year's Quaker State 400, presented by Advance Auto Parts. That's Brad Keselowski. And Brad drives the number 2 Miller Lite Ford for Team Penske. He is certainly coming to a track where he says, I think he describes the surface as having great character. And certainly Brad is a great character, so I think it fits in quite nicely. But Brad, talk about this racetrack. It certainly is high on your list for ones that you like to get around. And then also talk a little bit about the new rules package that will be running here on Saturday night. And, we haven't got on the track yet with it, but just talk about that and your outlook and preparation for this weekend.
Well, gladly, Commander. My first thought was I walked in through the other room, and there's 3 really nice jukeboxes over there. And I'm told that if you win the race, you get the jukebox. Is that true, Tim?
That is right.
Where was that last year? New sponsor. All right. Well, I really want to.
Hero.
Yeah, I can be the next guy to get one with a. The biggest one goes to the Cup race. All right. Well, I want a jukebox. I like that. See, I think more tracks should work to have cool, unique trophies. So, thank you, Tim and Kentucky Speedway, for that, and hopefully I can take one home. I know Martinsville's got the clock, and California had that. What do you call they call it a Woody, but I know not that kind of Woody, but a Woody vehicle. And I'd really like to get something cool and unique. But anyway, this is a great track for us, Commander. I think I look at it as one of those places that we kind of circle on the calendar for our team. And I saw something pretty interesting. I can't remember where I saw it. Maybe it was on one of the NASCAR stats, but this is the last mile and a half before the chase starts. And that just really hit me hard because to win the championship, you got to win the mile and a halves. And that's the championship is the mile and a half. Literally, the last race is a mile and a half. Every bracket has a mile and a half in it. If you're going to win the championship, you have to win the mile and a halves. And this is the last one before the chase. So whoever is strong here this weekend, this is really their last chance to really work and evolve into a spec or an iteration for their team to showcase strengths for what's going to count in a championship stretch. So I think that hit me really hard. And for that reason, we're looking for some really big things out of the 2-car this weekend. It's my goal to win another championship. We're not 100% where we want to be to do that, but we're in position in the sense of having a win, being locked into the chase, and having some great tracks ahead for us. So I'm really pumped about this part of the schedule. I'm pumped about being here in Kentucky. Not really sure how to answer the rules package question other than it's the same for everyone, and may the team and driver that's up to the challenge, the best team and driver up to the challenge, win. And I think we have a shot at being just that. So kind of just ready to go, ready for the rain to blow out, and all in all, very enthusiastic about this weekend.
Questions for Brad. We'll start here with Jeff and then go to Claire. Jeff, then Claire.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. Austin in the transcript last week said that you mentioned that you slid through oil and crashed into him. I'm wondering, that entire thing had to be quite eye-opening from your view. Can you describe what you saw and what happened through that whole sequence?
Yeah, it's kind of the sad part is I was kind of honestly embarrassed that I hit Austin that long after the wreck. A bunch of people asked me questions about it, but there was just so much debris that even being as far behind as I was, you couldn't slow down from 200 mile an hour. And that was frustrating. I felt very, very lucky when I got out of my car and went to Austin and saw that he was okay. I think those are really the thoughts that stick out to me the most. Just not a good deal.
Did you have a view of the entire incident?
Yeah, I had a little more view than probably I wished I would have had. But it was a spectacle for sure.
Let's go to Claire.
Two things. One, you don't really like talking about it right now, do you?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up on last week and forget the task ahead that is this week. And whether it's good or bad, I try not to do that. The reality is that's a restrictor plate racetrack. There's 4 of those races on the schedule, and we're through 3 of them. And so I still want to go to Talladega and win, but I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about a restrictor plate race. I'm thinking about this race for the reason stated earlier. This is a really big race for seeing who's going to have what it takes to win the championship over the next few months when we get to crunch time. So I'm ready. I'm thinking about that. I haven't thought that much about Daytona.
Also want to ask you, as a team owner in the truck series, what do you think that it will be like for the truck racers who are new at this track and haven't practiced here to race here? Has that thought entered your mind, and what do you think that they'll experience?
Yeah, I went through that situation once personally in 2004. I went to Kansas Speedway for my first, I think it was my first mile-and-a-half truck race. And it rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. And we finally got to race with no practice, no qualifying. And they dropped the green. I just remember how crazy it was. None of the trucks were set up for the track, because you didn't have any practice. The drivers weren't really ready. And I think we wrecked like 10 or 15 times in that race. And I got caught up in one of them, which was really kind of devastating personally, because we didn't have a big budget or even really another truck at the time. But I remember it, and now when I look at it, and I went and told my 2 drivers, I guess the garage is that way, Tyler Reddick and Ryan Blaney, about that experience, and be ready, because they're not set up for the track, and the drivers aren't prepared. Usually, these are the craziest of races, so kind of just be prepared and try to get through it. Survival.
Let's go to Kelly, and then we'll go to Reed, and then we'll go to my gentleman right here. Kelly, raise your hand.
Kelly Kramer from PopularSpeed.com. Brad, I think the only mistake you made last year was cutting your hand in victory lane. Given the dominance of last year, and you mentioned the importance of this race being the last mile-and-a-half before the chase, is there anything that that works from last year that you can carry over to tomorrow given the new rules package?
Well, I think to correct it, first off, Kelly, Paul would tell you I made a lot more mistakes than that. We rewatched the race yesterday in the hauler while it was raining, and he pointed out a bunch of them, so I get a good reminder of those from both my dad and Paul. But as far as how the package carries over, I think it's pretty similar. Although the aero balance is a little different in the cars, aero balance meaning how much downforce they make in the front and rear. I've always kind of thought of this as more of a mechanical grip track because of the bumps, and none of those rules have changed with anything that should affect us. So. The cars are still on the ride height rule where they're let down and all that. So I think most everything carries over, or at least we hope, because that's how we're going to approach it.
Let's go to Reed. Raise your hand, Reed.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. You were talking about this being the last mile-and-a-half before the chase. Given the fact that we may have different aero rules for repave versus old pavement, that sort of thing, and the time difference between now and the chase, what aspects of what you can learn here may prove useful once you get down to the chase?
Well, certainly if NASCAR goes with this aero package for the chase, which I can't speak for them if that's the plan or not, then there's a lot to be learned that will carry over, which is probably the biggest thing. But you said something at the start there, Reed, about varying packages for different tracks, and I think that's I'm in that camp. I'm on that team that says that's what's going to take our sport to the next level as far as the quality of racing is concerned, is developing genre-specific packages for the tracks, with the realization that when the car of tomorrow, and now as it's called, the Generation 6 car came out, I think it was designed to perform at a higher level at the plate tracks, and in some way, whether it was intentional or not, the road courses. And we've seen the road course races and the plate tracks in that time, the last 7 or 8 years, kind of turn into some of what I think most of the industry and its fans would recognize the best racing that our sport has to offer now. And that, to me, is a huge marker for rules development for the cars packages. And we feel like as drivers that we know the package that we need to put on the best racing. And it's somewhere around the marks that we had 10 years ago, downforce-wise, power-wise, etc. But the reality was that was not perhaps the best racing for road courses and super speedways in terms of both the quality of racing and the safety perspective. So I think what that comes back to is kind of a self-awareness that the sport is starting to grow, that I'm very supportive of, that running the same rules package or car at every racetrack, despite glaring differences in layouts, is probably not in the best interest of the sport. And to see us grow self-aware of that, as I've seen over the last month, I think is a very bright spot for the sport and its future in terms of the quality of racing. So I guess to circle back to the start of your question, I'm really supportive of that and think that could be very significant for our sport going forward.
Let's go to the young man right here in the blue shirt. And then we'll go to the gentleman over here in the Tigers hat, and then back to Chris.
Joey Chapman, PopularSpeed.com. On the Xfinity side of things, whether it's been yourself, Joey Logano, or Ryan Blaney, each time someone gets in that car in the 22, it's always successful. One, what does that say about the team? And two, how confident do you feel when you get behind the wheel of that car?
Well, if Roger Penske or Tim Cindric here, I would say that, or I would tell him that means he's got 3 badass drivers. But they're not, and the reality is to be successful in the sport, it takes everything. You got to have great drivers, great team, great car. All those pieces have to be right, and there's a lot of depth for Penske at the Xfinity level. Greg Irwin has taken over the team from last year, which was Jeremy Bollins, and he's done a great job. Jeremy did a great job. Joey Logano has taken more races over the last 2 years. I think I'd run 15 to 20 over the last few years, and that number has kind of dwindled down to 10 to 12 here over the last 2, where Joey's taken a few and Ryan Blaney's taken a few, which is on purpose, and they've done both a great job. So I think it's really just it's everything is going right. We've got great partners. Been fortunate enough to have Discount Tire come back for, I guess this is year 6, which is hard to believe. I can still remember year 1. So all the pieces are really together right now for that program, and the 22 car at the Xfinity level has really, to me, developed into a dynasty of a team that I'm very proud to be associated with and to have the 3 championships we do. So hopefully we can continue that and turn that into a 4th championship this year.
The gentleman right here, go ahead.
Troy Brzeski, Above the Fold Media.
I lost you. I'm sorry. Oh, there you are. Good to see you.
When a team tests at a track, whether it's a tire test or a private test, and the track goes green or the weather conditions are different, what portion of the information that you learned goes out the window?
Not that much, honestly, because when we test at a track in general, it's green. So, it takes a little bit of time for us to get it rubbered in and get going. But most of it carries over. So, I feel perhaps that's part of the confidence for me here is I was part of the test. I subbed for Joey Logano, who had to tend to some other things. So, and the track was just as green as it is now when we started. And we got up to speed fairly quickly, and I thought it all went very well. So, it's not too much of a concern for me personally.
Let's go to Chris.
ChrisKnight, Brad, 2016 season will be here before you know it. In April, you said at Bristol Motor Speedway you were scouting the NASCAR Xfinity Series race for potential prospects. for BKR. Just wondering if you have your eye on anybody in particular.
Yeah, I've still been looking at a few people, but I haven't found anything that has really grown any legs. Our program is in the midst of moving into a new shop in Statesville, North Carolina, which kind of has expanded our capabilities. And right now we're at 2 teams and have the potential to grow to more, which I would kind of personally like to see, but we're not committed to, which is a good spot to be in. And we don't have really any of our driver lineup set for next year. So for either of the 2 teams we have, or potentially if we were to expand, which I would say at this point we don't have plans to expand, but certainly open-minded to it. But we don't have it figured out yet, and we're kind of in a somewhat unique position of having some sponsorship for our programs, which we're very thankful for, but not really 100% of what we're looking for. So, solving that funding equation is always very difficult and factors in very heavily into what we do. And at this point, we don't necessarily have all those chips figured out, which I think kind of precedes the driver lineup.
New shop ready? When's the new shop ready?
I think we're stage 1 of moving in. We're kind of moving in 3 stages, which hopefully it's kind of working. I want to throw a really big party when it's all done, and still kind of working on when we're going to get to the all done stage, but we're in the just moving in stage.
Let's go to Nate back in the corner. Nate, did you get your question, Mark? Okay. Let's not forget Mark. I think I almost forgot him, but I didn't. Let's go to Nate, then we'll go to Mark, and then Jeff.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. Brad, going back to what you were saying about reviewing the race with Paul, I'm just curious, is that like a regular thing? Was that a rain delay thing? And does that work both ways? Do you get to be critical of his tactical prowess as well?
I'm not. He would tell you there's no shortage of criticism both ways. I wasn't going to say that here because I have the mic and he doesn't. But no, I think we try to. It's tough. We both have somewhat demanding schedules. Mine, obviously, growing more demanding with, having a baby. But we work really hard to try to find some time to spend together to go over that stuff. And some weeks are better than others. And rain delays always help communication.
Let's go to Mark, and then we'll finish up with Jeff.
Mark Garrow, PRN. Brad, I know you talked a little earlier about you'd like to focus ahead and not really deal with the previous week, that kind of thing. But when you came here this week, any thought at all about what happened in Victory Lane last year? Just thought like, holy smokes, did that really happen?
No, I seem to keep getting a couple reminders about that. Thanks, Mark. My hand is almost healed. I got a really nasty scar, so that doesn't look like it's going to go away, but most all the nerve damage went away, which is really good, so I can move it really well. But yeah, that was interesting. Someone taught me. It came to one of my appearances in where was I? I think Phoenix, maybe it was Texas. I don't know. And they just showed up to get an autograph, and it was this lady, and she came out and she just grabbed. She had something in her pocket. She grabbed it out. And it was a sword. And she goes, "I've got to show you something. And I don't know what to think right now." And she said, No. I want to show you how to open a champagne bottle with a sword. And I said, all right, now this I got to see. So she showed me, said, "I don't want you to ever hurt your hand again because that didn't look like much fun. And we're a fan of yours." And so she grabbed a sword and opened a champagne bottle. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but it's a really cool trick. So I have a sword now. She gave me a sword. And there's a problem, though. It takes like a really special champagne bottle, and it's got to be like the right temperature to open it with a sword. So I haven't quite got the guts up to open a bottle with a sword, but if I was going to try it, this would be the weekend. So I'm still contemplating that for like a redemption, because I feel like that video could end up on like Tosh.0 or something. I need to do like a web redemption, if you've ever seen that show. But instead, I'd like to do a racetrack redemption. So, yes, it has entered my mind. Thanks, Mark.
Now, so Saturday night, potentially, if you win, you could do some swashbuckling.
I think it would be really cool, don't you? No, you don't think so, Commander? Not an advocate of bringing a sword to victory lane?
You do whatever you need to do.
I think we've gone downhill really fast with this media session. But no, I was kind of embarrassed by that one. That was a low light. Every once in a while, I'll get these things that come across my Twitter feed that'll say, top 10 worst victory celebrations, which is not a list you want to make, and I've made quite a few of them. So, for that moment specifically, so I better not bring a sword and bring another one to the table. Yes, thank you. I did have a lot of fun. That was one of the best victory celebrations.
Yes, it was.
Claire. Thank you.
Final question, Jeff Gluck.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking about what you said at the start of the news conference and not really wanting to reflect on it very much. And I was just kind of wondering, is that because you were shaken at all or a little bit scared about what happened at the time? Like, when you hit him, maybe that frightened you a little bit, that what could happen there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. Race cars are very, very well designed and built for high impacts. They're not ever going to be very well designed for multiple high impacts. And so, when I hit Austin the second time, I saw his first impact, and I knew when I was going to hit him the second time that his odds were a lot lower of walking away. But thankfully he did, so it worked out.
Brad, thank you very much, and
All right.
certainly good luck
Appreciate
this
it, guys.
weekend in Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you.